It's time for the Las Vegas Sportsline, brought to you by the Sunset Station with sports director Chuck Esposito. Presented by WagerTalk.com.
Oh, hi everybody. Welcome to the Monday edition of the Las Vegas Sportsline. I'm Dave Kochen. Ralph Michaels is here. Marco D'Angelo's off today. He'll be back tomorrow. Chuck Esposito's here, and that means we're at Sunset Station in Club Madrid, the beautiful studios here for our Monday afternoon quarterback edition of the show. Guys, fun weekend, and before we get into the games, let's talk about a couple of things that took place over the weekend involving the local teams. Chuck, the biggest comeback in UNLV football history, and it sure happened against the right team.
It did. It was wow. I mean, the fact that they got down 23-0 and the way that they came back in that night, it was fun watching the end of that game. Just the enthusiasm, the crowd, the way the fans got back into it. It definitely means I think Sanchez will be here another year. I think he had two, signature wins this year, which helped that program. But on our side of the counter, it was a good outcome for us as well.
Really? So there wasn't much local support then?
I think you look at UNLV and there's a lot more action against them than on them this year, and against Nevada, who's a better team. And, I mean, look at it. It was 23-0 pretty quickly in that game. So, again, good outcome for us.
And I guess the downside is now when you look back at the season that took place.
What if? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of losses that games should have won, and they might have been bowling. But it's still a good ending, 4-8 for the Rebels. But if you got to win one, it's the one where you get to paint the cannon red, and that's what they did. Good news for the Golden Knights. By the way, through 25 games, Marc-Andre Fleury has 5 shutouts. There aren't many goaltenders that have done that over the years in the NHL, and he was spectacular this week. Chuck, the Golden Knights with their first real good surge of the year.
They've won 3 games in a row now. They've moved up to the 3rd place in the Pacific Division. I think getting Nate Schmidt back has really helped in the back end. I thought maybe about 10 days to 2 weeks ago, Fleury was struggling a little bit. He seems to be a more confident goaltender, if that makes sense right now, with Nate Schmidt back. It was a big win against the Sharks. They play tomorrow night in Chicago against the Blackhawks, who we know are a struggling team, especially on the back end. They made a trade yesterday with some young players. I think it's a good opportunity for the Knights right now to keep that winning streak going.
Yeah, and Ralph, as soon as that happens, and we'll talk with Chuck about this as well, that gets things clicking at the windows again, doesn't it?
And really, Dave, you and I talked about it last week. Well, how are they going to handle that embarrassing loss? It's either boom, you have that player emotion turning it around, or you just start to fade. Now, it'll be interesting to see if they can make a trip back to the Midwest and carry that on the road in a long road trip.
I think, Ralph, you look at it this year, and the big difference has been is that we still see a tremendous amount of action on the Golden Knights games. By far the most heavily bet game every night that they play in the NHL. The big difference is that it's not always on the Knights now, that there is some value on the other team. Some nights we're Knights fans, some nights we're rooting against them. Where last year we were rooting against them night in and night out, not just against them, but against the puck line every night. That isn't the case so far this year.
I know that at the Sunset viewing party tomorrow night, we'll all be rooting for him, because that's always the case.
Yet, unfortunately, there's a big goose egg on the board. We think this is our third or fourth viewing party, and they're 0 so far. Last year during the playoffs, they had gone on that long winning streak before they lost the game against the Capitals in the final. So we're hoping they kind of right the ship. And, tomorrow night, though, real quickly again, free and open to the public, 5 o'clock, Blackhawks, Golden Knights, your chance to win an on-ice official VGK jersey, and a lot of other cool giveaways as well.
And tomorrow night will be one of the best of the viewing parties here because it's the Blackhawks, and there's so many Chicago Blackhawk fans here in town. This place is going to be packed tomorrow night. It's going to be a fun place to watch the game.
It will. Mayor Mike will have on, I'm sure, his lighted helmet. I'm not sure. He's a Chicago guy, but I know that he roots for both, I think, like a lot of us do. So I think you will have a tremendous turnout tomorrow night.
Last time I was here, I tried to slip $5 to win the Fleury.
There you go. All right, time for us to check out our Monday afternoon quarterback edition of the show. We take these in the Nevada rotation order, so the same way they're posted on the books boards right here at Sunset Station and all the Station Casinos properties. That's the way we review them, which means the Jaguars and Bills come up first. We've got 2 things to talk about here because the Jaguars fired their offensive coordinator coming out of this game and announced that Blake Bortles will be moving to the bench this Sunday, Chuck.
In essence, they made 2 moves. Not surprised. I watched a lot of that game yesterday, guys, and Bortles, for whatever reason, seems to scramble up into the sack. He doesn't scramble away from it. He holds the ball way too long. I thought, last year that he kind of took a step forward. They had a good running game. That defense played well. But when you ask him to win the game for you and there's more pressure on him, he just seems to self-destruct. I don't think he's the quarterback now that they can say we're going to build the future around Blake Bortles. To make a change this late in the season, I think they're clearly saying that we're going to go in a different direction. On the other side of the field, though, you look at the Buffalo Bills. They're going to have over $60 million in cap space next year. I know it's a tough place to get players to come to, but Josh Allen is 3-3 as a starter. I think that is some encouragement for a team that he has no wide receivers. There's no separation there. He's got a running back in McCoy that looks to have maybe lost a step. He's got an offensive line that needs improvement. But I think if you put characters around him, or I shouldn't say characters, but more weapons around him, like you did with Trubisky or Jared Goff, I think you could see Josh Allen start to take some of those steps to move forward in the not-too-distant future.
Well, and the thing of it is, Ralph, one thing we know is that the Bills have a pretty good defense. It's an above-average defense, so if they can build on the offensive side and get some weapons, like Chuck said, around Josh Allen, this team could be pretty good as soon as next year.
Yeah, and I completely agree with the Bortles situation. 12 of 23, a 1-2 ratio, and it's so much different playing from behind when you're a quarterback. When you had the number one defense in the league last year, it's easy to do what the Ravens did with, Flacco. But Jacksonville now 7 straight losses, 0-5-2 ATS in those 7 games.
And that defense, Ralph, really is not playing that good either.
No.
They fell behind quick yesterday. It was 14-0. They did come back. They were running the ball really well with Fournette. I still think you look at that team, and defensively, I think they'll be okay. They've got some young wideouts in Cole and Westbrook who are decent young wideouts. You've got Fournette, and when he's healthy, he is a really good back.
Yep.
He moves the chains. He has to stay healthy, of course, but they're going to have to address that quarterback position in the offseason.
And missing the second half, getting thrown out last, was a big game changer for them.
The Oakland Raiders, they need some game changers in terms of personnel. Maybe they'll get them by the time they move to Las Vegas. The Raiders coming off, I guess you could say, their best performance of the year, reverted to form yesterday. They did get a couple of breaks from the Ravens that got them a few points, but Baltimore stretched them eventually. There were some good games for the house and some bad ones. I think this was one of the bad ones.
This was one of the bad ones. They bet against the Raiders every week. I thought early in that game Lamar Jackson did not look good, had a couple of picks. The Raiders were kind of hanging around a bit. They had that late turnover that Terrell Suggs turned into a touchdown that got the late cover there. But, man, if you're a Raider fan, you look at what Khalil Mack did and the impact that he had with the Bears, and now you look at Amari Cooper, who on Thanksgiving just shined. Of course, Jerry likes to, overextend, when a guy has one game of success. But Cooper has looked good. They've played really well with him in the lineup. I think Ezekiel Elliott has ran better. It's opened up more holes. So they have a big game against the Saints this week. But if you're a Raider fan, you watch Cooper and Mack, and you got to just shake your head.
And we're not really going to talk about the Cowboys today because they played on Thursday. But, Chuck, you said when the trade was made, you were on the kind of the minority side. And I guess where I was that maybe they didn't have to give up a first because everybody else seemed to be offering thirds. But Amari Cooper is actually worth a first-round draft choice, like you said. I mean, he's that good.
I think you look at so many teams this year, and for whatever reason, I think you go back to the year that Beckham was drafted and the year before, receivers seem to make a quicker transition into the NFL. Now, over the last 2 years, it's gone in reverse. You see a lot of young receivers that haven't become the guy that they thought they would. I think when you're the Cowboys and you had some decent receivers, you had drafted Gallup, you had Cole Beasley, but you didn't have that stud wideout. Now, I think the jury's still out if Cooper will be that or not. But with a good offensive line, when healthy, Ezekiel Elliott, and you give another weapon to Dak Prescott, I think Amari Cooper may emerge to be one of those. He might not be in the same class as maybe Julio or Beckham.
No, but I think
next to it, right.
And, it's not like he only makes the wide receivers better. He makes the tight ends better and Ezekiel Elliott by stretching the field so that one player has actually helped all 3 positions on that offense.
49ers and Bucks were in a close game yesterday, and I think the officiating might have had an impact on this. The 49ers were their first and goal at the 1. I don't know how they ruled that they weren't in on two straight
How many
plays.
reviews did they have? It's unbelievable.
I thought they got it wrong. I thought, look, there's enough evidence to suggest that they were in the end zone, and from that point on, the 49ers seemed to lose their enthusiasm for the game. Tampa Bay took over, and look, Jameis Winston, He's a tease.
Good Winston, bad
Yep.
Winston.
Yep. Yesterday was very good. Now, I grant you, not against a great team, but, I mean, he was really good yesterday.
That was one of the games from my side of the counter is that I know it's Tampa, and I know you don't know what you're going to get with Winston, and I know how bad that defense has played, but I was surprised that the number dropped the way that it did. You look at the 49ers, they were going to be without Garcon. Goodwin got sent home the night before to deal with some off-field issues. They really didn't have any wideouts. They've got a number of injuries. Mullins didn't look good the week before. It was a road game, and I think every single game right now, Jameis Winston is playing for his pro football future. If it's with Tampa or if it's with another team. If Cutter's there or a new coach that comes in, they want to see what he has. After the game, he seemed very humble in the interview. I think he kind of realizes it, too, that maybe his people are telling him, hey, they're not going to keep going back and forth. Next time they're going to go to somebody else. So I was a little surprised, again, that number dropped the way that it did. Again, 49ers having to travel across country to play in this game. And
the player issues with the domestic
Goodwin.
violence.
With Foster,
That's just another distraction.
There
for
was
the
a number
team.
of distractions, I think, with Goodwin and Foster that were a little bit of a head scratcher to me to see it drop the way that it did.
The Giants and Eagles, pretty good football game. Might not mean much in the big story, big picture, but the Eagles finally come from behind. They win a game. This looked like it was going to be a train wreck game for the Eagles early on, Ralph. I mean, they fell behind quickly against the Giants, and I think the Eagles fans at that point were just throwing up their hands and saying this season's over. But they did come back and win it, and it keeps alive their chances in what is a tightly packed division.
Well, very few teams can be down 19-3 and allow 346 yards and completely flip the switch in the second half. So, the Eagles, we all have talked how they're not the Super Bowl champs. They're a completely different team, but they have some gumption and they have some leadership there to be able to do that in the second half.
I think it more than keeps their playoff hopes alive. I think it actually puts them maybe in the driver's seat in the NFC East because Dallas hosts no team there's no team that's hotter in the league than the Saints. So if Dallas loses this week and you look at a Philadelphia team that hosts a beat-up Washington team on Monday night, it's conceivable going into week 14 that you've got all three of those teams at 6-6 and Dallas and Philly play each other. I think Philly is right in it right now, and that come-from-behind victory might be something that we look back at that says that saved the season for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Talking about saving the season.
Oh, the Cleveland Browns. They're 4-6. Look, the Browns aren't going to make the playoffs this year, but they're 4-6-1. They could have had wins in other games. Baker Mayfield's stepping forward and really starting to look like he'll still have some rookie games, but he looks better with each game and looks like Hugh Jackson was unable to come up with the right formula to help the Bengals beat his former team.
So he was 1-15, 0-16, and 2-3. Now at Cincinnati, he's 0-3. Maybe it wasn't the Browns. Maybe it was just Hugh Jackson.
And Baker definitely threw a little shade towards Hugh's way after the game. I think you look at Baker Mayfield, and he has been on a nice little roll of late. It is the easiest part of their schedule. It gets a little bit tougher moving forward. To me, the big difference is really Nick Chubb. Although he didn't have a great game yesterday, he has that game-breaking capability. And this is another maybe knock on Hugh Jackson is that he kept saying the right things. He had 2 carries against Oakland, or 3 carries, 2 of them long touchdown runs. We got to get Chubb more involved. But he wasn't getting him involved. It wasn't until ownership and Dorsey decided, let's get rid of Carlos Hyde. Let's trade him to Jacksonville, see what we can get. Now we're forced to play Nick Chubb. This kid looks like that game breaker that every young quarterback needs. You've got some young receivers, although they haven't gotten the ball a lot to the big offseason trade in Jarvis Landry. He's kind of taken a few steps back of late, but you have to like what Baker Mayfield's done. I think he's got 5 straight games now with at least 2 touchdowns, which I believe is a rookie record.
And how in the world is I don't know. How's Marvin Lewis still coaching this team? I mean, they get worse and worse and worse. Now I don't know what they do. I think, is Driscoll going to play quarterback
He
now?
is. Dalton went on IR.
Yeah.
He went on IR today, so it will be Driscoll, and they signed Tom Savage from San Francisco. So Driscoll moved the team, though, yesterday. I mean, I know it was kind of in mop-up time, but he did move them up and down the field. He didn't look bad, but losing A.J. Green has just – that offense has not looked the same.
I will say this for the Browns. First road win, we all know it since October 1st, 2015. They're 1-25 now on the road. Just for perspective, in that same span, New England is 20-8 on the road, where the Browns are 1-25. So